Hey everybody, welcome to Hell If We Know, which is a podcast by me, Jonathan Freeman, and my friend Chris Auber. First things first, I wanted to announce that we will be decreasing our expected episode output from every Sunday to every other Sunday, which is actually a big improvement from what we've been doing because we've been busy and it's been so inconsistent. So hopefully this will be a rhythm that we can actually fall into and we'll be able to be consistent with. In terms of this episode specifically, you can look forward to hearing us talk probably more than we should and certainly more than we are qualified to do about race. So feel free to listen to that and form opinions and email us about how ignorant we are, because that would probably be good to hear and it'd be good to learn. Apparently I made up a band name that I thought Icarus and Kid was a band that I'd heard on Spotify or something one time, but I googled it afterwards and it turns out there is no such band. So if you're a band and you're looking for a name, Icarus and the Kid is available and it sounds kind of cool, I guess, and it has a backstory that if you tell people where it comes from, hopefully the podcast will get more listeners, which is cool. Chris and I also share our own T-Swift stories, which is the name I just made up for how your relationship with Taylor Swift's music has changed as her music has also changed. So hopefully that'll give you some little insight into who you're listening to and what you're dealing with here. And that's about it. Enjoy the episode.
You know my friend Spencer? I have been...
We've mentioned our relationship before on this podcast.
For better or worse, you know my friend Spencer. But yes. I've been sharing with him, every time I see a good one, I've been sharing with him good Korean t-shirts that I see. And you know the type of t-shirts I'm talking about. The type of t-shirts that have English words on them, but that have no sense to them at all. Like, they definitely just hired a t-shirt maker who was like, I know a couple of English words. And they like hired him to make all their t-shirts because none of these t-shirts make sense and they're all hilarious to me. And so every time I see a good one, I always text the text of that t-shirt to Spencer and we have a good chuckle over it.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to read you now, live on the podcast.
Oh, Jesus, it's coming out again now.
Oh no, are you okay?
Yeah, it just froze for a second. I hope that doesn't ever happen again in my life. So pray for me.
Father, Son, Holy Spirit. I'd like to read for you now live on the podcast some of my favorite t-shirts that I've seen so far in Korea.
Okay, I'm ready.
Tuesday, October 3rd, I saw a child with a t-shirt that said, Happy Christmas. Monday, September 25th, I saw a t-shirt that said, A bathing ape, with a picture of an ape bathing.
Okay, so it knows what it's talking about there.
Right, that was actually an outlier. In that one, it was like meta in that it knew what it was talking about. But most of these are great because they don't at all. Immediately following the bathing ape shirt, I saw somebody with a t-shirt that said, something in. Don't really know what that one means. Yeah. I have a picture of a hat here, like a baseball cap that says, feel party-like.
Nice.
Which...
I think we all feel party-like. Yeah, exactly. That's something we can all relate to.
I also have a picture of a shirt that my friend bought that says, put a person back. That's a good one.
I like that. That's like serious advice right there.
Put a person back. What can you say about that isn't already said by those 4 words?
Yeah, you should have never taken a person in the first place.
If you're going to put him back, don't take him in the first place. Know that ahead of time.
Right, yeah.
Ooh, this one is really heavy. Are you ready for this one?
Yes.
September 2nd at 2:30 p.m., I saw a shirt that said, the youth nowadays, very hard time. And I remember looking at that shirt and I was like, you know what? The youth nowadays, very hard time. That's so true.
Yeah, it is. Those baby boomers really didn't set us up too well, man.
Right. That they don't get us like t-shirts do.
Right.
Another favorite of mine was in big white text on a plain brown shirt, I saw just the word puberty.
Oh, man, these are actually pretty deep when you think about it, or when you don't think about it.
Or I was gonna say, when you don't think about it, it's almost better.
Yeah.
I saw a mother with I knew she was a mother because she was walking with her small son. She was wearing a t-shirt that said, my boyfriend, the pool boy. And I was like, I wonder if your husband knows about this boyfriend, the pool boy.
Right, seriously. I hope you can't read English.
Also, a crowd favorite has been, quote, inspirational with emus. Emus like emus like the tall bird.
Yeah, that's actually a really good band name.
Inspirational with emus. That's a good one. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I bet Spencer's gonna take it.
He probably
He's gonna start a new band and call it Inspirational with Emus. Release his garbage music. Does he listen to this podcast? Music.
Yeah, he does actually, and he's actually got a great band, Spencer. And they're called Cruise Director, and they're based out of Atlanta, and you should listen to them on Spotify.
Yeah, wait, is Cruise Director the same one with the CD he gave me?
No, that's his previous band, Talking Box Code.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they were pretty solid. Yeah, I enjoyed that.
Also,
I should listen to them again. I haven't listened to them in a while.
Yeah, I recommend all their music. Just like good like chill indie rock music.
Yeah.
So another favorite of mine has been
Spencer.
So it was a picture of Charlie Brown playing baseball, and it said, "Chocolate chip cookies follow me wherever I go."
Oh, I really, really love that. I want to wear that on Halloween for some reason.
And the thing is, I don't know where people buy these T-shirts. Like, I've seen a couple of them in stores. This one store called Tomato like definitely sells this kind of shirt to this kind of audience. But I don't a shirt that good, a picture of Charlie Brown playing baseball, and it says "Chocolate chip cookies follow me wherever I go." I don't know where you buy that shirt, and I really want it.
It's so good.
I know.
I bet there's like a KoreanT-shirts.com or something that you can get an account on.
And like I can't make these up. They're so bad that they're good. I in my wildest dreams I couldn't make one of these up.
Honestly, there's got to be like someone somewhere in the hierarchy of like that industry is like super aware of it.
They know
and
what
is like
they're
perpetuating it very intentionally. It can't be entirely bad. It has to be.
The fact that like when I tell this to most people, they're surprised by it is it's surprising to me. Like you and I commented on how silly European T-shirts are when we were in Germany together, but Korea is on a whole nother level because like zero people here speak English. At least some people in Germany, like they can also have an equal laugh at that T-shirt, but in Korea, like these are just a bunch of like English characters to them. Like they probably can't even read the words. And so when I see people wearing T-shirts like this, I'm like, I know that you don't know what that means, and I know that you don't know how funny that is.
On the other hand, I could also see that becoming like fashion in Europe or in America soon, where like we wear these T-shirts with characters with captions that don't make any sense.
Right.
I could see that becoming like the hipster thing.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Soon, like I think I'm gonna buy a couple of these T-shirts before I come back, and I'm going to pioneer this fashion when I come back.
Nice.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing the fruits of that labor.
Another one was the front of the T-shirt. The front of the T-shirt just said surfboards, and the back said asparagus. Two of my favorite things on one T-shirt. You can't go wrong with that.
You really can't. Some good old sparkle.
And that sparkle is all you can ask for these days. And I think this is the very first one that I texted to Spencer back in May. This says, "Soft blanket princess roller skates."
I don't like that one. That's too much.
You don't like that one?
They're trying too hard on that one.
That one. Like the person who wrote that T-shirt was definitely self-aware. Like they knew what they were talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And it's too obvious. They were trying to fit a form that they couldn't fit, in my opinion.
The thing is, like, the trick is to not try at all and to literally just come up with like as many English random words as you possibly can. And that one may have been a little too many and a little too self-aware.
Yeah, exactly. Man, bummer to go out on a bad note like that one. I feel really strongly that was the worst one.
Well, there was definitely Inspirational with Emus is a classic. Chocolate chip cookies follow me wherever I go.
I really want that.
Oh, that's a great one. And it was a picture of Charlie Brown too. Like, he's not even known for eating chocolate chip cookies or anything.
Exactly. No, he gets rocks on Halloween. He doesn't get chocolate chip cookies. Man,
oh man,
I need that shirt.
Yeah, we all need a shirt like that. We all need to be followed by chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah, more literally, I need the message of that shirt to be a reality for me.
Yeah, if only we were all followed by chocolate chip cookies, or if only there were like some of us and not all of us who were followed by chocolate chip cookies.
Those would be the coveted bad for few. Society.
Exactly. It would start to become a stars upon thars situation, which we've also talked about previously on this podcast.
That's true. I'd forgotten about that. That was a very like perfect amount of subtle reference there.
Yeah.
I was going for more of a Gattaca thing, but like it's the exact same story, really.
Dude, that was a good movie that I haven't seen in like 3 years, probably.
Yeah, we watched it like 3 times in my freshman bio class in high school for some reason.
And definitely like the movie you showed to your biology class. Just like Numbers is the show that you show to your in your math class in high school.
Yeah. So what else is new?
So this is something that I had written a while ago. Definitely a change of pace, but I wanted to ask your opinion on it. You as definitely more of a bleeding heart liberal than I.
For sure.
I don't remember what holiday it was. I think it was just like, it was Children's Day. That's what it was. It was Children's Day here in Korea 3-4 months ago. It was a while ago. I think it was in May. And basically on Children's Day, you just celebrate children being children. You allow them to like have a little bit more fun, and you just, it's a fun day basically at school. Like for us, it was a fun day at school, and we just had the kids do a bunch of like crafts and play games and stuff, and like it was definitely a very chill day. Nice. One of the crafts that they did was to make an Indian headdress, a Native American headdress, and put it on and like wear it around all day, and like it was just like a fun costume thing that they had. And I realized that it's a super hot topic for debate right now for an American of any age to make an Indian headdress and wear it around. People get on all the time for doing that at music festivals and things like that, for just like, putting on a bunch of feathers and, maybe like some face paint or something like that and purporting to be Native American. And so I'm wondering what your opinion is on Korean children doing it. Is it equally as racist? Is it not racist because they're Korean? They don't think about that over here. So like, is not thinking about it racist or non-racist? What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think for me, a lot of it, like whenever you look at any sort of like, is this offensive sort of thing, one of the most important things I feel like is the power dichotomy in the two things that are at play here, or however many things are at play. Mm-hmm. And so like if a white person uses a Native American image as like their mascot or something, that's just like a random example. I don't know where that's never been done in reality, but if something horrible like that,
if it were to hypothetically happen.
Exactly. That would be bad because white people have been horrible and oppressive and like systematically dismissive and murderous towards Native Americans for hundreds of years now. And there's been some improvement, certainly on that end. There's no more smallpox blankets. That's been an improvement.
I think those were, for the most part, an accident. To play devil's advocate here, I think, one, the smallpox blankets were mostly an accident. And two, let's be honest, most of the, quote, white people who were doing this kind of thing were conquistadors who were not white but Spanish. And you can blame the Spanish for that, and I bet they don't even feel guilty because they got their own stuff going on in Catalonia right now.
Well, weren't there like also tons of like English and Dutch and all of that coming in?
Oh, a whole lot, but if you ain't Dutch, you ain't much, as far as I'm concerned.
Did you just come up with that?
No, it's a well-known phrase in the Dutch community that I just stole.
Okay.
But still, I honestly, like, for the most part, all of Central South America and much of the southern United States was absolutely ruined by the Spanish conquistadors, and I think they should feel guilty for it, not me.
I mean, I don't know, like the guilt is an interesting dynamic there because it's like, okay, what did you personally literally do? But then there's also like where the subtle ways you don't notice you may contribute to something because you've been privileged to a point where you don't necessarily notice little things that may affect other people. But going back to like the ultimate thing, whether or not we've gotten way off, the smallpox blankets really took us off on a tangent there. But yeah, going back to the point, I don't think Koreans ever did anything horrible to Native Americans, to my knowledge. Mm-hmm. So that's major points in them being able to like engage with their culture in a way that's likely to be less offensive, because there's no personal, feud there. And then also I think it's like the context of why are you doing it and when is it being done and all that. And if it's being like educational, like you're telling them about Native American culture and the history there,
it wasn't
then it's
that
like,
though.
Oh no, okay.
It was just like it, like, so Koreans are super obsessed with like photographs, especially with little kids, and so, like they know that a bunch of little kids wearing a bunch of like colorful headdresses would make very cute photographs, and so they told us to let these kids color a bunch of headdresses. And so they did, and I allowed them to, and I told them to, and like I did it too, and I wore one, and I was very cute also, and we all did it together, Chris. And it was just like a whole thing, and I was like, whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. That's definitely different then. I don't know. I think there's still a way to do it. Probably that's like, okay, and here's what these are real people and their culture that we're representing. Maybe if they're just doing it to be kitschy and cute, that's a little bit probably not ideal.
Yeah, that was 100% what it was, though.
Yeah, okay, then this is not very great, I think. But the other thing is, I really don't know, because I'm like, I have my own privileges and biases, and like, if you want to know, like, is this something that you probably shouldn't do, ask a Native American, like, hey, do you think this is messed up? And they'll probably be like, yeah, and they can probably explain why for way better reasons than I can understand from my perspective.
Yeah.
So you just need to get a token Native American to follow you around everywhere you go
and be like, hey, stop
run
that.
things by. Exactly. Like, okay, cool. Don't worry. My token said not to do this, so we can't do it this time. So that's the future liberals want.
That is the future
we just want everyone to. We want one of every demographic in every group that goes anywhere, and they just need to constantly check things by one another before doing anything.
That's like when you look in your like history textbook from elementary school and you see like there's always like a group of kids who are so equally represented that it's a little weird. Like there's always a redhead kid, there's always a wheelchair kid, there's always a black kid, and it's like at least in like the demographic that I grew up in, like there definitely was never a wheelchair kid because like people don't have polio anymore. I understand like maybe in the 50s it would have been okay to have like a wheelchair kid in the group, but like for the most part people just aren't like confined to wheelchairs from birth anymore. And where I grew up, at least, there was not a lot of black people to be had in the group, and so it was always weird for me to like see that like oddly diverse group of people all like stuck together and you know, pretending to be normal.
You know, it's interesting because I did go to a way different high school than you did, and so there like actually was a lot of diversity going on there and stuff, and we did have people in wheelchairs pretty regularly.
Really?
Not for polio, but you know, that's, you know, other things happen to people. And it was definitely like there'd be like one person in a wheelchair at a time at the school, sometimes zero.
Well, that's all they need.
But
is
I mean, like, there's
one
other
token
things
wheelchair kid.
Right, and that's the other thing is like I definitely won't disagree with the idea that photo was like, I'm for sure that was a forced photo where they were like, okay, let's make sure we get one of each of these, put them in the picture together. But yeah, I mean, like there could have been situations. I don't know if I was ever hanging out with like a redhead kid, a black kid, and a wheelchair kid all at the same time at any point in my life. But like there are opportunities where that could have happened.
And were you all wearing your like knockoff polo shirts together and smiling at a camera, like Jim facing at a camera together?
No, definitely didn't do that.
So I teach this one class that is actually not really a class. It's just like one girl, because her parents pay a lot of money to only have her be the only student in the class, and so
that's weird.
It is really weird, and it's super odd to plan too, because like as a teacher you plan stuff around like group activities and like class participation, yeah. But when it's just you and one other student, it's literally just like me tutoring another person. But we still have to get. It's
all the downsides of homeschooling without even homeschooling.
Exactly, but so it is exactly that, and so like we still have to get through the pages in the book, which is what the Korean education system is all about. It's just like get through the textbook, and so we turned the page to this one story the other day in her language arts textbook, and there was a picture of a kid with like your typical ginger kid that like Sarah Chalk in Scrubs would have been afraid of. Very freckly, very red-haired, very pale, and very the antithesis of a Korean child. And the student who I tutor, who we'll call her Sarah. Her name's not Sarah, but we'll call her Sarah. She took one look at this person and she screamed. Listen to me. No. She and I are the only two people in the room. It's only me and her. She turned the page, she looked at this child, and she screamed. And I understand why, because like it's terrifying to see a person who looks like that if you've only ever seen like straight black-haired, black-eyed, brown-skinned people before. And she looked at that person, that picture of that freckled, pale, red-haired kid, and she was frightened. And I was like Sarah, like what's wrong? Like, do you think he's scary? And she's like, yes, very scary, Mr. Chris. And she did not want to look at this kid for another second. So I was like, all right, let's turn the page, skip that one, pretend like it never happened, and we'll pretend like there are no ginger kids in this entire world.
That's a healthy educational system to really perpetuate that.
She was very frightened. I didn't know what to do. I wasn't expecting it because I had already seen that page when I like looked at the lesson plan. I was like, okay, there's like a ginger kid, whatever. But I did not anticipate, and probably should have, her reaction to that page.
Yeah, holy cow.
Yeah.
It's like when you take health classes in high school and there's like they show you pictures of STDs. and you see like, oh my god, there are genitals in the world that look like that, and it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Like when you see a person with a different condition that you've just never been exposed to, and it's almost like it seems like there's something wrong with them.
Yeah.
You know, and then your like primal instincts kick in, and you're like, oh gosh, what is the condition here? How do I avoid this afflicting me? You know,
I know,
like you don't know what the condition does to you, but you know it's something different, and it's just like, it's terrifying, man. And it gets perpetuated by the systems and the man, because when the little Korean girl gets scared of a little redhead kid, they say, okay, yeah, let's ignore that. Redheads don't exist.
And by they,
you're just
you
causing
mean
the problems,
as the teacher.
man. Yeah, I mean you.
Yeah, I didn't know what to do. Like, she was very scared. Like as scared of a small child is of a monster or a ghost or something, or like something under their bed, so too was this child scared of a red-headed, freckled kid. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to linger on the problem. It honestly frightened her, and I was like, there's no need to be frightened in your language arts lesson. Let's get on with it. And so I just moved on, and that was it.
Yeah, that was a real teaching opportunity, though, man.
Looking back on it, especially with your commentary now, I see that it was. And
I may have dramatized it a little bit.
But like to support myself and my own decision, which I now know is like probably the wrong one, let me just say that like she'll probably never leave Korea. She'll probably never see one of these people in real life, and she'll definitely never have to interact with one of these people in real life. So it's probably not a huge deal, but I also could have handled it better.
She is for sure going to get married to a redhead man now.
No, she's
and she's
terrified
never
of
going to
him.
be comfortable with it. Yeah,
Would you get married to the boogeyman?
Maybe.
Well,
If like the boogeyman was very... Yeah, but like I could just see like a very... Sorry. I'd see like a very unhealthy like situation where she like submits to redheaded people now because she's scared of what they might do. You know, when you're scared of something, like it's like an abusive relationship where it's like a cycle because you're so scared to like run away from it or to get out of it because you know that they can like hurt you and that they have hurt you and they have this control over you. Maybe that's why she's scared of redheads, and now she's gonna marry a redhead, and he's never gonna even abuse her, but it's gonna be an abusive relationship, and she won't know how to handle it because of you.
God, I hope that's not the case, because I will be fully to blame.
Yeah, exactly, 100%.
My friend Blakely has done several like not mission trips, because that's like it like has to do with religion, but like she's gone several times to Uganda to like help poor people, like I don't know, build houses for them and like stuff like that, and they are terrified of her because she's very pale and very blonde and very blue-eyed, very Aryan looking. And the people in Uganda have never seen somebody like her before. And so they look at her and they think, she's told me that they think that she has no skin. Not that she has white skin, but that she has no skin because she looks like a skeleton to them. And they are terrified of her. And I think it's something similar here in Cheongju, South Korea, where somebody looks at a redheaded stepchild and is like, that person is a monster, not a human being.
And that's what makes America great. Is that we are exposed to these things and we can learn humanity and things that are different from us.
Yeah, and in all the crap that America gets for being, not this and not that, we are diverse. Some places are not diverse. Some microcosms, like where I grew up, are not diverse. But America as a whole is very diverse. And I never... Okay, like after middle school, I never like was surprised at just seeing a black guy around or like seeing an Asian person, And like especially now after having traveled to a bunch of different places, you totally realize that America is a very diverse bag of Chex Mix.
Yeah.
While we may not all be the melting pot that we are purported to be, we definitely all have our own flavor, and we all coexist pretty well together as a coexistence goes.
Yeah. And I'd rather be a mosaic than a melting pot anyway.
Chex Mix was the metaphor that I used, but yeah, you're
right. No, sorry, I'd rather be Chex Mix than a melting pot. It's maintaining the food imagery there, so that's a good idea. Although I guess you can melt things other than food, but I'm picturing a fondue.
That's what I always picture too.
Because of Scott. Yeah, so I'd rather be Chex Mix than a melting pot, for sure. Were you going to tell me a Bible story today?
I was going to tell you a Bible story.
This is going to be a long one. It's going to take forever.
How long have we been recording? Let's see. 50 minutes. We can cut it down, but it's okay.
Not bad. Okay, cool.
Let me tell you a Bible story. This one may be a little less in depth than I've recently gone in my retellings of Bible stories.
That's good because we have no time.
And there's also not really a way to tell this without giving it away right at the beginning. But I will say that okay, let me just tell you right at the beginning. This is the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. Do you know it?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. I think this is Genesis 18. I want to say Genesis 18, 19 maybe. It might even go into like both chapters, Genesis 18 and 19. But this is a story about a boy named Lot. A boy named Lot. Lot is...
He's like a grown man, but yeah.
Okay, he's a grown man named Lot. And not unlike our friend Job from previous episodes, Lot is a great character. He's just a great guy. He's like the kind of guy that you want to be in the Bible. He's very admirable. He does all the right things for the most part. And once upon a time, our boy named Lot came upon some angels who showed up at his city called Sodom.
Oh, yeah. You're going to go with that very specific scene?
I'm going to go with this very specific scene that I found very interesting when I read the story. Yeah. And I wanted to know a professional's opinion on the story of Lot.
Don't call me that. This is not a time when I want to be called that.
All right. Let me continue. For those of us who have never heard the story of Lot before, here it is in the SparkNotes version. Once upon a time, there was a boy named Lot who lived in a city called Sodom. Yes, you've heard it before. You may have heard of sodomy before. Sodomy is probably most likely where this... I'll just lay it right out there. Sodomy is the act of having sex that wasn't meant to procreate and sex that isn't necessarily going straight into the cavity of procreation. We'll just leave it at that. And we'll say
that's creepier than it needed to be.
I know. I should have just explained it normally. We all know what I'm talking about. If you're of age, you know what I'm talking about. We're talking about fellatio and the third hole, the third eye blind.
That stuff.
And so one day,
the stinky winker, as I like to call it.
the little pink starfish.
There you go.
And so one day, some angels who were sent by God came up to Lot's house. And they wanted a place to stay for the night. So they asked him, hey, can I stay here for the night? And our friend Lot said, of course you can stay here. He's very noble. He's a very virtuous man. And he said, of course, angels, you can stay here for the night. I will. He said, my house is your house. He said, probably mi casa es su casa. And he allowed them the space and the time and the food and all the privileges that come with staying in a wonderful house like his, in the city of Sodom, which was a city of pleasures of the unknown. And the angels had some very specific requests. They wanted to stay there, but they also wanted to not be... They didn't want to be hurt in any way by the townspeople. But the townspeople had a different request from those angels. You see, as the angels were sleeping that night, the townspeople came up to the door, they knocked. Hello, Lot, are you home? And Lot said, I sure am. Come on in. And he opened the door and he said, how are you, townspeople? But here's the twist. The townspeople showed up at his door with pitchforks and torches, I imagine. It was somewhat like the first scene in Shrek. And the townspeople said, we want to know your angels in the biblical sense. But
given our context, you probably understand.
Given our context, you probably understand what the biblical sense means. And by the way, might I add, all of these people who showed up at the door of Lot, they were all men. They were all grown men. They were all citizens of the town of Sodom, and they all wanted to know the angels in the biblical sense. I guess they must have seen him walking down the street. They must have said, wow, this is fine angels. I would love to know them. And so Lot says, look, I made a promise to these angels. I told them that I wouldn't let any harm come to them, and I let them in, and they're sleeping right now, just like, please don't bother them. And so the guys said, well, that's fine, but we're just going to burn your house, and we're going to get very angry at you, and we're not going to let you get away without us letting you know that we want to touch those angels very inappropriately. Lot said, okay, here's my last-ditch effort. I have 2 daughters. They're virgins. They're ripe for the picking. You can have them. Please just don't take these angels that showed up on my doorstep, who are both 2 fully grown, sexy men angels. Please take my 2 daughter virgins in the place of these 2 sexy man angels. And the guys said, no, we're going to go with the angels. Thank you, though. And so they decided not to go with the virgins. They decided not to go with the angels. Instead, they decided to attack Lot. Luckily, Lot had the side of God they had the fear of God on his side, and he came out on top. for a little bit. Quickly thereafter, God said to him, look, I heard what's been happening. I heard that these angels, who are my sexy boys who live in heaven and who came down to you just temporarily, I heard they ran into some trouble, and I heard you even offered your daughters to be raped to them. I don't want this to be the case, says God. I want to seek some retribution for these terrible atrocities that have happened, and here's my solution. And he lays it out for Lot. The city of Sodom has been annoying me for quite some time now. I'm going to do you a solid, and I'm going to let you have a 5-minute head start and run out of the city as fast as you can. You and all your loved ones, anybody you tell, they can get out of the city safely. Don't worry, they're going to be fine. As soon as you're out of the city, though, I am going to burn this place to the ground with fiery sulfur raining from the sky. Fiery sulfur will burn down everything that you've ever known, and I hope you're okay with that. Lot says, you know what? You're right. These angels came to me, and that must have been for a reason that they came to me. And I'm going to leave here with my wife and my daughters and these 2 angels, and we're going to get out of here safely. And God says, good choice. Thank you. You have 5 minutes. I'll see you then. And so Lot takes the TF out of the city, and he's running at a pace that Usain Bolt would be proud of. And quickly thereafter, he hears behind him the sound of cities burning and people screaming, and he knows that those sodomites who have been threatening to do all those terrible things to the angels that stay with him are gone, along with the entire city that he's ever known behind him. And so that's almost the end of the story until Lot's wife... Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell this to you before, but God says, by the way, as you're running away from the city, please don't look behind you, because if you do, you will be turned into a pillar of salt. And according to this children's cartoon that I watched on YouTube, summarizing the story of Lot and his wife...
this is what you were talking about when you said you needed to do research.
I told you I needed to do research, and this is what happened. I watched like a 25-minute children's cartoon of this story, and I will tell you it's great. But also, it's very accurate in the fact that Lot's wife turns around to see what's happening to her beloved city and her beloved possessions, and she turns immediately into a pillar of salt, just as God promised. And so you know that God's not effing around. He is for real here. And Lot knows that he cannot look back either, or else he will also be turned into a pillar of salt. And so he runs as fast as he can out into the woods to the Appalachian Mountains that Joseph Smith told us the Book of Mormon tells us about. And so essentially what happens is Lot and his 2 daughters go into the woods together. They go into a cave. Lot's wife is far behind, turned into a pillar of salt, probably being licked clean by deers and very, very helpful for hunters of the area. But Lot and his 2 daughters go to a cave. They live there for a couple years, very happy that they're not in the city of Sodom anymore, very free from the guilt of living in such a sinful city. And basically, Lot's daughters want to preserve their lineage, so they get him drunk and they rape him not once but 2 times. And that is pretty much the end of the story as far as I am concerned. So I would like to now know your opinion of that story.
Oh, man.
I know this is
when I said that very specific story, I thought you were just going to talk about the angels and what almost happened to them.
Again, I know there's a whole lot going on here. There's angels almost being raped by a bunch of men. Again, male angels almost being raped by men. by a bunch of men. And I know there's a lot of incest going on. So it's a tough story, but it's an important one, and I want you to dissect it with me.
Okay, yeah. That'll be fun. First off, I want to say we will put the link to that cartoon in our description.
We sure will. I'll send it to you after the episode.
Oh, cool. Thanks. Yeah, so there's that. Okay, first things first. This angel scene really bothers me because I've heard a lot of people use it in certain ways, and I want to dispel some of that. Because I know a lot of people use that scene where the men come and want to rape the angels, and specifically the fact that Lot's like, no, you can rape my daughters instead. I know that scene gets used.
He straight up says that.
Biblical examples. Yeah, exactly. And I know that a lot of people look at that scene and they say, okay, that's an example of why homosexuality is a sin. Like, this is one of those scenes in the Bible where people derive that from it. And you just made a face.
Yeah, I made a face saying, like, that's what you took from that? Like, that homosexuality is a sin? Lot offers his daughters to be raped and to be used as the entire city of men. And, like, That's what I took from that. Like, how dare you, Lot, offer your daughters, your only lineage in the world, to be ravaged by these sodomite men?
Thank you. That's exactly the like natural and real and human conclusion that I feel like makes a lot more sense. It has to do with a lot of just like really intense sexism at the time, saying like, okay, look, these are my guests, these are grown men, that's inappropriate, but I have these daughters, they're just like my daughters, whatever, they're women, they don't count, they're my children, they don't count. So like when we were looking at the Job story, like this idea of like the women and children in that story are just his possessions, essentially. A lot of that same sort of thing is really messed up. But like, yeah, so thank you for just agreeing with that and not being like, I can kind of see it. Because like in Christian circles where it's already assumed that homosexuality is a sin, like they go into this story with that being a major takeaway. So that's the first thing I want to address. And so I'm glad I wouldn't have guessed you would have been like, yeah, I'm kind of coming around on this. But like, I'm really glad we're on the same page here.
Like okay. neither rape nor allowing your daughters to be pillaged by these random people is okay.
That's the official stance of the podcast. I'll say it right now.
Take it or leave it. Stop listening now if you disagree. Or don't. I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. Or keep listening and learn, maybe.
Or tell us why you think you're right.
Yeah. HellifWeKnowPodcast@gmail.com. That'll be an interesting conversation.
Hi, I think rape is okay. Sincerely, a guy.
Right. Definitely a guy.
Definitely a guy.
We know that much.
Well, that's the whole thing, though, is like, at the end of this chapter, it's the daughters, women, who rape the guy, the father. So like maybe it's a woman who writes us and says, hey, like maybe rape's not all that bad. Maybe.
Probably not. I really don't.
I sure hope not. I sure hope we get 0 messages that say, hey, maybe rape's not all that bad. Yeah. Can I pause to pee?
Yeah, please do. I might even do the same thing because I've been holding it for a minute.
Cool. Break time. See ya.
Yeah. See you soon. Hey again.
And we're back like your spinal cord. What's up?
Were you thinking of that while I was sitting down?
Yeah, I was thinking of that.
It was good. I like it.
Thanks.
Nice. So also while we were peeing, I went over to my dad's room and asked him what his takeaway on Sodom and Gomorrah was, because I still don't have anything.
In just like the 2 minutes we were gone, you asked him what his opinion on like rape and sodomy was, and he gave you an answer that you're willing to share on the podcast? Wow, okay, tell me.
Right, well, I'm willing to share it because I'm still trying to buy time to think of something. Also, I did say like real quick because I'm recording right now, so he gave me a very quick answer. But he said, and I think this is a direct quote. It's been long enough now that I'm liable to have forgotten it. But he said...
It's been a full 30 seconds.
Exactly. And you know how I am. But he said that the city was evil and that God protects God's people. Can you hear my mom's dog in the background?
I sure can.
Yeah, that's what I thought. He's the worst. Anyway. Yeah, so that's what my dad said, and I think so
that's like the easy message that you're supposed to take away from that. Like,
exactly.
As the Bible reader, you're supposed to be like, well, they were a bunch of so like, of course God destroyed them. It's the Old Testament. What do you expect? Right. But like, that's too easy for me.
Yeah, same. And that's, I mean, I don't want to like badmouth my dad because I did give him like 5 seconds to explain Sodom and Gomorrah to me. So I'm sure if we'd had a conversation, it would have been very fruitful. But like, you know, but like I will go and say like that's not enough for me. But I won't say that there is a 5-second solution anyway. So it was an unfair question.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think for me, part of what this story raises is like the question of God's wrath. You know. And I had a conversation about this.
There is no question of God's wrath in the Old Testament, dude. OT God does not GAF. He doesn't care at all.
Well, that's the thing. Is like, in my understanding of God, is that God is the same God in the Old Testament and the New Testament, and that there's.
And that's just wacky.
It is wacky, yeah. But I think like in terms of like, okay, if God is the same, why are these stories so different? And it leads me to think about like what has changed is obviously humanity has changed, and so God relates to humanity differently because there's been this dynamic shift within the relationship. So of course God won't be the same God to us as God was back then because we've changed so much that it wouldn't communicate. But then there's that, obviously the question there is like, well then why was God ever that way to us? Why was humanity in such a place that like that was the rationale, like the perfect rationale of God was like, yeah, we just wipe out cities, you know? That's how you handle these situations.
You don't like me enough, I'll just wipe you out. It's a big deal.
Exactly. Yeah, like I don't believe in the maturation of God. I just believe in the maturation of the relationship between God and humanity. But that's not enough to explain a story like this one.
I have a quick question that kind of has to do with this.
Yeah.
Do you know off the top of your head what time difference we're talking about between the last book of the Old Testament and the first book of the New Testament?
I don't. But like hundreds of years, pretty sure.
Okay. So, like, you just talked about, like, you don't like to think about the maturation of God, but I do, because I think that's at least in my pea-brained, like, explanation of this to myself, to me, I understand, like, God definitely went through, like, an adolescent phase where he just wanted to destroy everything and, like, be mean to people, and then he finally became, like, a good dude who's just like, I'm gonna have a kid, and, like, and treat the kid like I treat everyone else, and, like, golden rule, man, and, like, cool, it's all chill. And so
having a kid changes you, man.
Right, yeah, it does. And so I like to think that, like, that's the explanation that we can go with. But so you said it's hundreds of years probably between the last book of the Old Testament and the first book of the New Testament. And
yeah, kind of shooting in the dark, but yeah.
But it's probably pretty close to the truth. And even if it's like 5 years, then that's definitely enough time for God to be like, ooh, I should change my tactics because this is not going well.
Right. And I mean, like, definitely between, like, Sodom and Gomorrah and, like, the birth of Christ, or especially between Sodom and Gomorrah and the time that the first story about Jesus was written, that would have been a very, very long time. Like, for sure, centuries.
Definitely.
Maybe more than that. Probably more than that. I really should stop talking about this because I'm really bad at remembering the timelines.
I was going to say, numbers are mostly inconsequential at this point.
Numbers is also one of the most boring books of the Bible.
Numbers is also my favorite TV show that I watched the entire year of discrete math in my senior year of high school.
Numbers is also my favorite Angus and Julia Stone album.
Numbers is also... I don't have another one to add on, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay because I made up my one, so it was already inconsistent.
You win then. You win anyway. I could have... Dang it.
Okay, cool. So yeah, this story in God's wrath. One of the things that I think about a lot is how God experiences emotions. Because in my image of God, who is consistent and exists sort of outside of time, which again, not like your interpretation of this and like God's like development and maturation, like you can totally come away from this story with that idea, and that's pretty valid. Honestly, it makes a lot more sense than anything else. But like when I look at God as like being this omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, all-loving being that exists outside of time and exists with all moments simultaneously, sort of, how does God experience worry? That's the one I think of the most. Because there are passages in the New Testament, and I think in the Old Testament, in the Psalms maybe, that are like, yeah, don't worry about tomorrow, you know? Like, there's a one in, I think, Luke, where it's like, the lilies of the field are clothed so beautifully, you know, all the birds are flying and they're singing their songs, and if God cares for them this well, how much better does God care for you, sort of thing. But there's also this side of it where it's like, okay, sure, but here we are, there's a lot of terrible things going on. Whether or not the lilies are clothed beautifully, like, people are dying and being oppressed in horrible, mutilated ways. I was going to
say, while the lilies are blooming, people are being raped by angels.
Exactly.
Or, like, people are raping angels.
Right, angels don't rape. Episode title?
Angels don't rape, that's it, dude, that's it.
Okay, cool. But yeah, so, yeah, all this is happening, sure, and sure God cares for those things, and sure God cares for us. But there must be some element to God where it's like, oh man, like, even if it's just like an empathy thing where it's like, yeah, things are so horrible right now. Like, how can God not worry, at least in an empathetic sense? Like, even if ultimately everything does work out for like the global humanity, there are humans that will suffer and die and be miserable, and that's like the end of their story, at least in like the earthly sense. Then they go to heaven and everything's great, and that's why God doesn't worry. I already know that's the argument, but like there has to be that empathetic Jesus human side of God that's like concerned. And so what does that concern feel like for someone that knows how everything ends and like exists outside of time and sees all of it at once and is perfect and loving? Like, what does that concern feel like? And so that's a question that I think about a lot because it's just interesting to me. But similarly, like if you look at the wrath of God in the Old Testament, and if you look at like Jesus cleansing the temple, what is perfect anger like too? You know? And it's like when I read a story like this, I get an example of it, but I still have no idea what to do with it, you know?
Yeah, one of my biggest questions about the Bible is like, what is a justified anger and like justified reaction onto that anger? Because that's that one passage in the Bible where Jesus like is super pissed with a bunch of people who are like selling their products and like birds and shit in the marketplace in front of the temple. And he literally like table flips, like he like meme table flips a bunch of like people who are selling like birds or like doves or something, and he's very angry at it. But to me, that's like, how much of a jerk do you have to be to like flip somebody's table, dude? Like, they're just trying to make their living. But everybody who reads that and is like very Christian is like, oh yeah, but it's righteous anger, so it's okay. And I'm like, like, is it really though? Because like that's not really how I think anger works. But so it's interesting for me how God and Jesus, who are pretty much the same person, get different rules than the rest of us do.
Yeah. And then, like, I mean, I guess it's, for me, it's like, sure, there are different rules because they understand more, so that really there are no rules, I guess, essentially, is because they understand things perfectly, theoretically at least. Like, the decisions they make are the right decisions, theoretically.
No rules, bro.
There's one rule.
There's one rule, and it's that there's 10 rules, and you can buy them in my book of 10 rules, signed here.
The subtitle for the Bible, my book of 10 rules.
No, that's the subtitle for the 10 Commandments, which we should also do an episode on.
Yeah, no, that would be good, actually. We should do that. Let me add that to the list right now.
We should compare the 10 Commandments with the 10 like rules that Joseph Smith comes up with in the Mormon Bible, which is not at all called the Mormon Bible.
What's it called? The Book of Mormon.
The Book of Mormon, right?
The Mormon Bible. Fair enough.
The Mormon Bible, I swear.
I don't know if Mormons would mind it being called the Mormon Bible. I don't know if that's a thing for them. I can't imagine it's a big deal, right?
I was gonna say, Mormons are so friendly that like even if it were offensive, they'd be like, it's okay.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they allowed
that Trey Parker and Matt Stone's Book of Mormon Broadway play to like flourish, and they were like, but it's all in good fun.
Exactly. That's a good point. Mormons are cool, man.
They are so cool.
Yeah. Official stance of the podcast, Mormons are cool.
Yeah, again, I fully support that.
Cool. What else? So yeah, God's wrath. It's an interesting thing to me because it's like there are clear examples that God experiences wrath. But what am I to make of those? I don't have an answer at all. Sorry.
Do you have a commentary at all on Lot's daughter's raping of Lot to preserve their lineage?
Yes. My commentary is that's messed up. That is super messed up. And I think that's just an example of like, you know, Jewish tradition is like really big on lineages and all of that. What are you doing?
I don't know. I'm just like messing with my hair, but you're right.
Yeah.
So Jewish tradition is super big on lineage, yeah.
Yeah. And so like for me that story isn't a story of like, and here's the moral message here. To me that's a story of like, yeah, this is just our record keeping. Like keeping books of like, yep, and then Lot's daughters raped him and begat so and so. Exactly. Like the first chapter in Matthew is just like David begat Solomon, who begat blah blah blah, who begat blah blah blah. Like to me this is just like a very detailed Lot's daughters begat so and so, and it's disgusting and definitely example like this is not saying like, yeah, you got to preserve your lineage, guys. The Bible says preserve your lineage at all costs. That's not the message to take away from that. I think that's just a record-keeping situation.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that makes me feel a little better then, because I know in my heart of hearts that like all of the Bible doesn't say like, and this is how you should live your life exactly. But there's also part of me that's like, some people may believe that. Yeah. And if that's the case, then like that person de facto has to advocate for daughters raping their father, like getting them drunk and raping their fathers.
Yeah.
Because that's what happened. Like they lived in a cave in fear of the sulfur burning, and the daughters were like, we need to preserve our lineage, so we're going to get our father drunk and have sex with them. And that was the end.
Yep. Good story, bro.
Good story about Lot and his friends and his wife, who's now a pillar of salt.
Yeah. That's one of the things I wonder about, too, is, like, how that part of that story gets taken culturally. Because we've already sort of looked at the incredible sexism of, like, the daughters being property that he can give away to spare the angels. But, like, how does the daughter's agency and humanity, play into the fact that they just raped their dad?
Yeah, they definitely tend to play the part of just, like, I'm the baby maker and that's it.
Right.
And that's a little troublesome because they are voluntold to be raped by a bunch of like sodomites, and then later they're voluntold by their own inner conscience to be to do the raping of their father so that they can preserve their lineage. And if that's the case, then we are all ancestors of incestuity. Incestuousness, maybe? Incest is the word that I'm looking for. Thank you.
It's okay. I've done that same thing.
That took a lot more. It took a lot less brain power than I thought, actually.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, that's an interesting take. I like that because it's super sexist. Which is not something that I like. But I like the
official stance of the podcast. We like sexism.
Right. No, I like that the acknowledgement of that because like even in them like being this assertive and like making all the decisive actions and like being the oppressors in a sense, it is because like their only role was to have children. Like they didn't do it because they wanted to. They did it because like, okay, we've got to have kids. This is all we are. So like even then it's like a product of the sexism of that time and I don't know, the culture in which that story gets told.
Yeah, it's weird to me too that like they were personally so okay with that. Mm-hmm. Like both of them agreed with each other that like this was the right decision to do, and neither of them were like, but wait, like we're people, like maybe we should like get an education, like I don't know, go to school or something. They were both just like, yeah, like this is what we should do and nothing else. Yeah. And there was no argument. Like at least in the Bible's retelling of the story, right. There was never any like, but wait, what if we did something else? They were both just like, yep, we should do this.
Yeah, and it's like that's what I'm kind of wondering too is like there had to have at least been some like I imagine right. At least like when they're like giving their dad the wine, which also what's going on with him at that time is like, wow, where's all this wine coming from, you guys?
He had just seen his entire city, everything he had ever known, destroyed by fiery sulfur. Give him a break.
That's true. That's a very valid point.
By the way, fiery sulfur, I'm told, is exactly what, like, it's the smell of farts. Like, farts are sulfur. So I assume that his entire city was just, like, lit up with a fiery fart. And that is... like that would drive me to be raped by my daughters too, maybe. So we'll see.
Wow, that's a pretty bold statement.
Yeah, don't record that one.
Too late.
It's too late. It's much too late. But I'm saying that would definitely like drive me to insanity.
Yeah, I will say, "Fiery Fart" is my favorite Icarus and the Kid album.
Oh, good one.
Thank
you.
Good
nice.
One, yes.
Nice also, one. Yeah, that was a good one.
Also, maybe a contender for episode title as well.
Fiery Farts?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we'll keep it in the mix.
Cool. I also want to say you keep playing with your hair and like pulling the pointy part of your bangs down, and every time you do, you look like emo Spider-Man in Spider-Man 3.
Oh, dude. Okay. People hate on emo Spider-Man in Spider-Man 3, but let's be honest, like. He made that movie.
Oh, absolutely. It's in the whole trilogy. That's the
for better or worse, he made that movie. Like Tobey Maguire, like on the edge, made me kind of on the edge too.
Yeah, nice. And especially like it's endured in our generation. Like it's still a big part of our culture is emo Spider-Man.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember when Taylor Swift dropped her new song, the really bad one, the "Look What You Made Me Do" one. Like I remember seeing memes of like, no, it's a terrible song. But I remember seeing memes. People would like put lyrics to that song under images of like emo Spider-Man flicking his hair or something. It was the funniest stuff ever. I loved it.
Okay, that's hilarious, but also F-U-C-K for not liking that song.
And by F-U-C-K you mean
look what you made me
fun
do.
uncle cool kid.
You just made me do. No, dude, that song is good, and
really
this whole
bad.
Album that she's about to release is going to be really good. I'm really excited.
I don't know, man. That's the only one I heard from it, and I hate it so much that I will not listen to the rest of it. Except for I'm sure I will,
she came out
because
with
it
a new
will.
song called "Gorgeous," and I'm into it.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to listen to it, but I'm sure I'll hear it at some point.
Listen, I was a closeted Taylor Swift fan for a long time, and I only recently, as of 4.5 years ago, which is not recently at all, came out in full support of everything that woman does. And I realized that maybe she's not the best example for a person who's seeking a healthy relationship, but does she make good music?
No.
Ask me if she makes good music.
I'm not even. I can't ask you that question.
Ask me if she makes good music.
I'm sorry, Chris.
Ask me.
Does Taylor Swift make good music?
She makes good music.
Here's my thing. I'm just gonna. You've revealed your history with Taylor Swift. I'll reveal mine now.
I'm turning my headphones off.
Well, I'll just speak into the void then. I'll just tell our moms this story. Yeah, no, like I remember when Taylor Swift was like new in pop country and everything. I was like, oh, this is so bad. But that was partially just because like everyone was like, oh, this is so bad. But still, everyone secretly listened to her. And so like a couple of years later, when it was like ironic to like Taylor Swift, I started to be like, oh yeah, like these aren't great songs, but they're fun to listen to. And so I sort of became a Taylor Swift fan at that point, listening to like her earlier stuff, just being like, yeah, I don't love it, but it's fun stuff to listen to, right? We can all agree on that, right?
It is fun stuff to listen to. It's also great songs.
Anyway, moving forward, she had all these little like style changes where she became like straight pop, then she became sort of like electronic pop slightly. I mean, not really. I don't know how to describe a lot of her more recent stuff. But like it's been shaped a lot by like whatever is like popular. I guess it is just pop, but like the development of pop has directly been represented in her music, I guess. But anyway,
I'm taking notes right now. I'm taking notes.
Right. Okay. Good. But yeah, and then there was "Shake It Off," which was like not a great song, but it was the best song ever. In that it was just like so. You're like just scratching your desk right now. You're really committed to this bit.
I'm pretending to take notes, but I'm taking mental notes.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, "Shake It Off." I'd like, it was like kind of cheesy, kind of dumb, but it was like a great song to listen to. It was so much fun. It was super catchy, so I loved it for that reason, right? "Look What You Made Me Do" is 0% good. It's not catchy in a way that I enjoy. The lyrics are dumber than ever. It's just angst. It is unbridled angst put into like a little pop
welcome
machine.
Welcome to the last episode of Hell If We Know, everybody.
We cannot work together
our
anymore.
9-episode run. We'll literally never see you again because of this one discrepancy that we have in our musical taste.
Honestly, that's how I felt when we argued about cereal milk.
Oh my god.
Yeah, we haven't really addressed the pillar of salt thing other than that there's that Jermaine Clement movie about it. How weird is that?
Gandhi would have been proud. We'll say that.
Yeah. I guess so. Would he?
Proud? Okay, maybe proud is the wrong adjective, but he would have been appreciative of a giant pillar of salt appearing in his region.
Right, yeah, that's fair, I guess. But yeah, so it's weird though that it becomes a pillar of salt. And I feel like I should know something. There's like, for sure there's symbolism, right?
Like, God definitely loves punishing people in appropriate ways, and a pillar of salt is just a little inappropriate, but not in like a bad way, just in like a I don't quite get it way.
Right. Yeah. I think, okay, here's what I know about salt. I know that obviously, like, in the salt marches prove this. Sodium, yeah. It's a big part of like living. You know, it's one of the most basic spices or seasonings or whatever. You need it to live and to eat food generally, and especially at that time.
Good for preservatives?
Yeah, good for preservatives, exactly. So at that time, it would have been like a very like essential and important thing. That's thing number one I know about salt. This isn't leading to a conclusion. This is just me presenting things I know about salt. So hopefully you can be like, and here's how we tie it all together.
Episode title, Things I Know About Salt.
I think that's my favorite one. We'll do that.
Is that clickbaity enough, do you think?
If someone sees that title and doesn't click on it, what are they doing with their lives? You know, that's so enticing. Anyway, so that's thing number one. Thing number two I know about salt is that it was used not only for traveling and for eating, but also for the rituals that go around sacrifices in Jewish culture. Pretty sure about that one, at least. I don't know, but I think that's a fact. So, I mean, they would have carried some relevance through, like, the just ritualistic relevance through the importance of what they do with their sacrifices. I don't know what exactly they used it for, but I'm sure it's relevant. Thing number 3 I know about salt is that it's in the Dead Sea, which I don't know if that's anywhere near Sodom, but I know that later, Galilee is where Jesus is, and the Dead Sea is there. So this is becoming way less and less relevant to the story we're talking about, but I'm going to keep saying things I know about salt until you stop me. Thing number 4 I know about salt. Okay.
Stop talking about salt. Right now. Stop it.
Thank you. I'm glad you stopped me.
Because you didn't know any more things about salt, did you?
Thing number 4 was going to be that it's white usually.
It sure is most of the time, I think.
Yeah, it's probably not always white, but yeah.
I've only seen it in pre-made cans, but in my experience, it's been wholly white.
So yeah, that's what we've got.
Shakers,
what do you think of that?
I think that is that is an accurate and the best interpretation that I could ask for from a professional who doesn't purport to be a professional.
Thank you. I agree. Yeah, I should look up. I bet if we just like Googled right now, why is Lot's wife become salt? I bet we could find some stuff.
I bet you wouldn't, because I literally tried to find out this information before the podcast and I couldn't.
Oh, and shoot!
Eventually I trundled upon a children's cartoon about Lot's wife, and I couldn't tear my eyes away because it was so bad.
Gotcha. Cool. We'll put a link to that in the description too then.
Yeah, we will.
I bet we could figure it out, though. If we Googled, we could figure it out and then release our own article and then pay Google lots of money to make it the first article.
Oh, we could.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Cool, yeah. Do you wanna end it here saying that we know nothing about Lot and his wife, but we think it's an interesting story and there's a lot that we can grasp from it in regards to culture then and culture now?
Yeah, except for I would say we should end it here and say that we know nothing about Lot and Lot's wife, but we think it's an interesting story and has a lot to say about culture then and culture now.
That was a good addition there. I like that. Thank you.
Good. That sounds like the right note to end the episode on.
All right. Both of us promise to be dads that won't let our daughters be raped.
And or not to be dads.
And we may not be dads ever. So hope you have a great evening or morning or afternoon, and we hope
night
that
also.
You are, and night also. Thank you.
Thanks. Hey, I just signed off, but then I remembered to sign back on and say, if you have any questions, corrections, or suggestions, or anything of the sort, feel free to contact us at HellifWeKnowPodcast@gmail.com. We are at HellifWeKnow on Instagram and Twitter, and we got a Facebook page that I think if you just search Hell If We Know, it'll show up. Also, write us on iTunes, and if anything else that you want to do, if you want to send us money, if you want to do anything at all. We live in a free society, and it's a crazy world. There's a lot of debate around the existence of free will versus predetermination, or even just outside of religious concepts. There's science leading to the idea that all these atoms that were set into motion at the beginning of time were always going to do the things that they did. And maybe you don't have a soul. Maybe there's just the neurons in your brain firing in the way that they were programmed to do at your birth, And so I don't know if you can freely choose to do whatever you want to do. But regardless of what you believe about that, you gotta do what you do. And do it. And hopefully that includes rating us on iTunes, sending us money, and following us on social media. Thanks, bye.